The Alien Empress panicked. When her children disappeared, humans had already taken them. In another 16-hour shift was coming to an end at Mining Station Omega-7, humanity's most remote outpost in the neutral zone. The station floated like a metal island in the darkness between human and Zelathi space, a testament to the uneasy peace that had lasted barely 6 months since the war ended. The 45-year-old mechanic preferred it out here, away from the crowds and politics of the core worlds. His salt and pepper beard needed trimming, and his coveralls had seen better days, but appearances didn't matter much when your only companions were mining drones and the occasional freight captain passing through. That's how Marcus liked it. No complications, no drama, just machines that needed fixing in the vast silence of space. He was securing his tools when a soft thump echoed from the cargo hold adjacent to his workshop. Marcus froze, listening intently. The station's cargo bays were supposed to be sealed after the last shipment arrived 3 days ago. Another sound, like something small being knocked over, made him reach for the plasma cutter on his workbench. It wasn't exactly a weapon, but it would do in a pinch. Moving silently through the connecting corridor, Marcus activated the bay's emergency lighting with a gesture. The harsh white beams illuminated towers of supply crates and mining equipment, casting long shadows across the deck. He moved between the containers methodically, checking each corner and crevice. Years of military training before his discharge never really left you, even when you tried to forget. Behind a stack of food supplies, he found them. 3 small figures huddled together, trying to make themselves invisible in the shadows. But there was no hiding their distinctive appearance. Pale violet skin that seemed to shimmer in the artificial light, large eyes that reflected like a cat's, and delicate features that marked them unmistakably as Zelathi. More specifically, Zelathi children, none of them looking older than what would be 8 or 9 in human years. Marcus kept the plasma cutter lowered but ready. The Zelathi were technically at peace with humanity, but old habits from 5 years of brutal warfare died hard. The children stared at him with those enormous eyes, a mixture of fear and exhaustion evident in their faces. The smallest one, barely reaching Marcus's waist, was clutching what looked like a stuffed animal to her chest, though it was unlike any earth creature he'd recognized. The oldest of the 3, distinguishable by intricate markings on her forehead that seemed natural rather than decorative, stepped forward slightly. Her thin frame trembled, but she held her chin high with a dignity that seemed beyond her years. When she spoke, it was in accented but clear English, surprising Marcus. "Please, we mean no harm. We are seeking sanctuary." Marcus studied them more carefully. Their clothes, though dirty and torn in places, were made of fabric that shifted color subtly as they moved. That wasn't standard Zelathi civilian wear. It was expensive, probably worth more than Marcus made in a year. The middle child wore what looked like a ceremonial sash, though it had been hastily wrapped around her waist to make it less conspicuous. These weren't refugee children from the border colonies. Sanctuary from what? Marcus asked, his voice gruff from disuse. He couldn't remember the last time he'd had a real conversation with anyone. The eldest glanced at her companions before answering. "From those who would harm us. We were betrayed by those we trusted. Our guardian was killed helping us escape. We've been hiding in cargo shipments for 7 cycles, moving from station to station. 7 cycles meant 7 days in Zelathi terms." Marcus noticed the hollowness in their cheeks, the way the smallest one swayed slightly on her feet. Whatever their story, these kids were exhausted and probably hadn't eaten properly in days. His military instincts warred with his common sense. Getting involved with Zelathi political problems was the last thing he needed. But looking at those scared, hungry children, something in his chest tightened. "What are your names?" he found himself asking, lowering the plasma cutter completely. "I am Thyra," the eldest said. She gestured to the others. "This is Myra, and our youngest sister is Lyra. Sisters." Marcus noticed the family resemblance now, the similar bone structure despite their different heights. He also noticed the way Thyra positioned herself protectively between him and her younger siblings, ready to defend them despite being obviously terrified herself. "I'm Marcus," he said, making a decision he'd probably regret. "Come on, you look like you could use some food." The workshop's break room wasn't much, just a small space with a food synthesizer, a table and a few chairs. But it was warm and private, connected to his workshop by a door he could lock. Marcus pulled 3 emergency ration packs from storage and heated them up. They weren't gourmet by any stretch, but they were nutritious and filling. The children ate with a desperation that confirmed his suspicion about how long it had been since their last meal. The youngest, Lyra, struggled with the human utensils until Marcus showed her how to hold them properly. She gave him a shy smile that transformed her alien features into something undeniably childlike and vulnerable. "So," Marcus said, leaning against the counter with his arms crossed. "You want to tell me what 3 Zalathi kids are doing hiding in a human station's cargo bay? And don't try to tell me you're just regular refugees. That fabric you're wearing contains light-bending metamaterials. That's royal family technology." Thyra nearly choked on her food. She looked at him with new wariness, but also something like respect. "You know about Zalathi technology?" "I fought in the war," Marcus said simply. "Spent 3 years studying everything about your people we could get our hands on. Know your enemy and all that." He softened his tone slightly. "But the war's over. Now, so why don't you tell me what's really going on?" The 3 sisters exchanged glances, conducting one of those silent conversations that only siblings could manage. Finally, Thyra spoke. "We are the daughters of Empress Sci-Larva of the Zalathi Empire. 4 days ago, there was an attempt on our family. Our mother's security forces were compromised. She sent us away with her most trusted guardian while she dealt with the threat. But the guardian was killed when the conspirators found us. We've been running ever since." Marcus felt his stomach drop. The daughters of the Zalathi Empress. He'd just taken in 3 of the most politically important children in known space. If they were discovered here, it could reignite the war. But if he turned them away and something happened to them, that could be even worse. "Does anyone know you're here?" he asked. "We don't think so." Myra spoke for the first time, her voice softer than her older sisters. "We were careful. We learned how to avoid detection systems from our guardian before she died." The way her voice broke on the last word made Marcus's chest tighten again. These might be alien royalty, but they were also just kids who'd watched someone they cared about die protecting them. A sudden alert on his communications panel made everyone freeze. Marcus moved to check it, reading the message from station, security. They were conducting a sweep of all cargo bays, looking for unauthorized life signs that had been detected in the past hour. They'd reach his section in less than 30 minutes. Marcus turned to find 3 pairs of frightened eyes watching him. He could turn them in, claim he'd just discovered them. It would be the safe thing to do, the smart thing. Instead, he found himself saying, "There's a maintenance shaft in my workshop that leads to the old mining tunnels. They're not on any current station maps. You'll be safe there while I deal with security." "Why?" Thyra asked, suspicion and hope warring in her expression. "Why would you help us? Our people were enemies." Marcus thought of his daughter, who would have been about Thyra's age if she'd survived the attack on Colony 7. He thought of how these 3 had reminded him of her in that moment of absolute fear and vulnerability. "We're enemies," he emphasized, past tense, and because someone needs to. "Now come on, we don't have much time." He led them through his workshop to a panel in the floor he'd discovered years ago during routine maintenance. The shaft below led to a network of tunnels from the station's original construction, long since abandoned when newer sections were built. Marcus had turned one of the larger chambers into a private storage area, but it would work as a hiding spot. "There are emergency lights down there, and I'll bring you supplies once security passes," he told them as they climbed down. "Don't make any noise and don't activate anything electronic. The tunnels should shield you from sensors, but let's not take chances." "Marcus," Thyra said, pausing at the shaft entrance. "Thank you." He nodded gruffly. "Don't thank me yet. We still have to figure out what to do with you 3 long-term." As he sealed the panel and prepared for security's arrival, Marcus wondered what he'd gotten himself into. But one thing was certain, those 3 children weren't going to face whatever was hunting them alone, not on his watch. Bonds across species, the security sweep had passed without incident 3 hours ago. but Marcus still moved cautiously as he descended into the maintenance tunnels with a pack full of supplies. The abandoned passages were lit only by emergency, strips that cast everything in a pale blue glow. He found the 3 Zalathi princesses exactly where he'd left them, huddled together in the chamber he'd indicated, the youngest asleep with her head in Thyra's lap. "It's clear," Marcus announced softly, setting down the pack. "Security thinks the life signs were a sensor malfunction. Happens often enough out here that they didn't dig too deep." He'd brought blankets, more food, water, and a few electronic entertainment pads he'd modified to work without network connectivity. The last thing they needed was for someone to track an unusual signal. Myra immediately gravitated toward one of the pads, her eyes lighting up when she saw it contained a library of human literature and educational programs. "You're a soldier," Thyra observed, watching how he moved, how he'd packed the supplies with military efficiency. "Or you were." "Marine Corps, retired," Marcus confirmed, spreading out the blankets to create a more comfortable space. 15 years of service before I decided I'd had enough of taking orders and watching people die." "Is that why you're out here alone?" she asked, with perception beyond her years. Marcus paused in his work. "Something like that." He changed the subject. "Tell me about this assassination attempt. Who wants you dead?" Thyra's expression darkened. "Minister Kravax. He believes the peace treaty with humanity is a mistake. He thinks pure Zalathi bloodlines should rule, and that my mother's willingness to consider human integration makes her weak." "Integration?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "The treaty barely covers trade and borders." "Publicly, yes. But Mother has been negotiating more. Cultural exchanges, shared technology development, even military cooperation. She believes our species are stronger together. Kravax and his followers see it as contamination of our purity." Marcus snorted. "Purity? Every species has idiots who think like that. Never ends well for anyone." Lyra stirred, waking with a small whimper. She looked around in momentary panic before her eyes found Marcus, and she relaxed slightly. It was strange, he thought, how quickly she decided he was safe. She crawled over to where he was sitting and, to his surprise, curled up against his side. "Lyra," Thyra hissed, mortified. "You cannot simply—" "It's all right," Marcus said, though he held himself stiffly, unsure how to react to the alien child, seeking comfort from him. "She's scared, it's normal." "She says you feel warm," Myra translated, looking up from her pad. "Zalathi body temperature runs lower than humans. She finds it comforting." Marcus awkwardly patted Lyra's head, her hair feeling like silk threads under his calloused fingers. The little girl made a sound almost like a purr and pressed closer. Despite himself, Marcus felt his tension easing. It had been so long since he'd been needed by anyone, since he'd been anything more than the station's antisocial mechanic. "Your mother," he said to Thyra. "She'll be looking for you." "If she's still alive," Thyra whispered, her composed mask finally cracking. "We don't know if the coup succeeded. We can't risk trying to contact her if Kravax controls the communication networks." Marcus pulled out a secured data pad from his jacket. "I might be able to help with that. I've got some contacts from my service days, people who monitor military and political channels. Let me see what I can find out." He sent carefully worded inquiries to a few trusted sources, making sure not to reveal why he was asking. While they waited for responses, he found himself answering the children's questions about human culture, technology, and especially about Earth animals, after Lyra showed him her stuffed toy was meant to be her interpretation of an Earth cat, though it had 6 legs and scales. "Why did humans fight so hard during the war?" Myra asked suddenly. "Our teachers said humans had inferior technology but somehow held their own for 5 years. Marcus considered his answer carefully. "Because we're stubborn and creative. You, Zalathi, you follow established patterns, traditional tactics. Humans, we improvise. We duct tape things together that shouldn't work, but somehow do. We look at impossible odds and say, yeah, but what if we tried this crazy thing? It's not always smart, but sometimes it's exactly what's needed." "Like helping 3 alien princesses hide from assassins?" Thyra asked with a slight smile. Exactly, like that, Marcus admitted with a rough chuckle. His datapad chimed with an encrypted response. Marcus read it, his expression growing serious. Your mother is alive. She's consolidated control of the home fleet and is hunting for Kravax's forces. But... He hesitated. But what? Thyra demanded. She's also gone public about your disappearance. Every ship, station, and outpost in 3 sectors is looking for you. The official story is that you were kidnapped by extremists. There's a massive reward for information leading to your recovery. Then we're trapped, Myra said quietly. If we reveal ourselves, Kravax's supporters might find us first. If we stay hidden, Mother will think we're dead. Marcus stood, pacing the small chamber as he thought. His military mind was already working, through scenarios, analyzing risks and opportunities. Not necessarily. I know someone who might be able to get a secure message to your mother. Someone even Kravax wouldn't think to monitor. Who? Thyra asked. Admiral Jennifer Heirs. She was my commanding officer during the war. She's retired now, but she still has connections. More importantly, she was one of the architects of the peace treaty. If anyone can create a back channel to your mother without alerting the conspirators, it's her. You would do this for us? Thyra's voice was thick with emotion. Contact your former commander, risk exposing yourself? Marcus looked at the 3 young faces watching him with hope and trust he hadn't earned. Lyra had stood and taken his hand, her small fingers barely wrapping around 2 of his. Yeah, he said gruffly. I would. It took 3 days to establish contact with Admiral Heirs, and another 2 to verify the security of the communication channel. During that time, Marcus found himself growing attached to the 3 princesses in ways he hadn't expected. Thyra's quick intelligence and dry humor reminded him of better times. Myra's endless curiosity about human engineering led to her becoming his unofficial assistant in the workshop during the late shifts when no one else was around. And Lyra had taken to following him everywhere she could, often falling asleep on his shoulder while he worked. They'd established a routine. Marcus would work his normal shifts, checking on them periodically. After hours, he'd bring them up to his workshop where they could move around more freely. He'd even started teaching them human games, discovering that Zalathi children were remarkably good at chess, but terrible at poker, because their facial expressions were too honest. On the 5th night, as Myra helped him repair a mining drone while her sister slept on the break room couch, she asked, Do you have children of your own? Marcus's hands stilled on the circuit board he was soldering. I had a daughter. Once. Had? Myra's large eyes widened with understanding. The war? Colony 7. Kravax's forces hit it in the 3rd year of the war. No survivors. He said it, matter-of-factly, but Myra must have heard something in his voice because she put down her tools and wrapped her thin arms around him in an awkward hug. I'm sorry, she whispered. That's why you're helping us, isn't it? Because you couldn't save her? Marcus returned the hug carefully, afraid his human strength might hurt her delicate frame. Maybe. Or maybe it's because you 3 reminded me that not all Zalathi supported the war, that there's good in both our species worth protecting. A soft chime from his secured pad interrupted the moment. Admiral Heirs had responded with coordinates and a time for a secured real-time communication. Marcus woke Thyra and Lyra, and the 4 of them gathered around the communication terminal in his workshop. The screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Hayes' weathered but sharp face. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw the Zalathi children. Well, Chen, when you said you had a situation, you weren't exaggerating. Your Highnesses, she nodded respectfully to the princesses. Admiral, Thyra responded with equal formality. We need your help to reach our mother safely. Already done, Hayes said with a slight smile. I've been in contact with Empress Sylarva for the past 6 hours. She's very eager to speak with you. The screen split, and suddenly the imposing figure of the Zalathi Empress appeared. Marcus had seen her in propaganda videos during the war, but nothing had prepared him for the raw emotion that crossed her features when she saw her daughters. My little stars. She breathed in Zalathi, then switched to English. You're safe. You're alive. Mother. All three princesses pressed close to the screen, tears streaming down their faces as they spoke over each other in rapid zealothy. Marcus stepped back, giving them privacy for their reunion, but Lyra caught his hand and pulled him back into frame. Mother, this is Marcus, she announced proudly. He saved us. He's been protecting us and teaching us about humans, and he's very warm and kind, even though he pretends to be grumpy. The Empress's penetrating gaze fixed on Marcus, and he resisted the urge to stand at attention. Mr. Chen, my daughters tell me you've risked much to keep them safe. Just doing what anyone would do, Your Majesty, Marcus mumbled, uncomfortable with the scrutiny. No, the Empress said firmly. Not anyone. A human who fought against us, who lost his own child to our forces, who had every reason to turn them away or use them for leverage. Yet you protected them, asked for nothing in return. She paused, seeming to come to a decision. I'm sending my personal ship to retrieve them. It will arrive in 18 hours. I would like you to accompany them. That's not necessary. It is, she interrupted. Kravax is still at large. I need someone I can trust to guard my daughters. Someone who has already proven they will put my children's safety above politics or personal gain. Admiral Hayes speaks highly of your service record. I'm offering you a position in the Royal Guard if you'll accept it. Marcus looked at the three princesses. Thyra nodded encouragingly. Myra smiled hopefully. Lyra simply squeezed his hand tighter. Please, Marcus, she said softly. We feel safe with you. He thought of his empty workshop, his solitary existence, the ghosts he'd been running from for years. Then he thought of these three young lives that had crashed into his world and somehow made it brighter. All right, he said roughly, but I'm not wearing any fancy ceremonial armor. The Empress actually smiled. I think that can be arranged. Alliance through trust. The Empress's personal flagship, the Stellar Crown, was a masterpiece of Zalathi engineering that made human vessels look like cargo haulers. Marcus stood in the docking bay, his few possessions in a single duffel bag, watching the sleek purple hull shimmer with energy shields as it approached Station Omega-7. The three princesses stood beside him, Lyra clutching his hand while her sisters tried to maintain royal composure despite their obvious excitement. That's the Veil Drive, Myra said, pointing to the strange distortion around the ship's engines. It lets us travel through folded space. We could reach the homeworld in 12 hours instead of 3 weeks. Impressive, Marcus admitted. In all his years fighting the Zalathi, he'd never been this close to their advanced technology without trying to blow it up. The ship docked with barely a whisper of contact. The airlock hissed open, revealing a contingent of royal guards in there. Distinctive armor, a blend of ceremonial elegance and practical protection. Marcus tensed instinctively, his hand moving to where his sidearm would normally be, though he'd left it in his quarters. The guards parted, and Empress Silerva herself stepped through. She was taller than Marcus had expected, nearly 7 feet, with the same violet skin as her daughters but marked with intricate natural patterns that seemed to shift in the light. Her presence was commanding, but the moment she saw her children, all imperial bearing vanished. My little stars, she said, dropping to her knees as the three princesses ran to her. The embrace that followed was fierce and desperate, the Empress holding her daughters as if afraid they might disappear. Marcus hung back, uncomfortable witnessing such raw emotion. When she finally released them, the Empress stood and approached Marcus. Up close, he could see the exhaustion in her features, the weight of the past day's events. Mr. Chen, she said, extending her hand in the human fashion. Words cannot express my gratitude. Marcus shook her hand, surprised by its coolness and the strength in her grip. They're good kids, anyone would have done the same. We both know that's not true. She studied him with those penetrating eyes. Lyra hasn't stopped talking about you in our communications. She says you tell the best stories and that you fixed her toy. She gestured to the stuffed, not quite cat that Lyra was clutching. Its head fell off, Marcus said awkwardly. Just some basic stitching. A ghost of a smile crossed the Empress's face. Come, we have much to discuss during the journey. The interior of the Stellar Crown was even more impressive than its exterior. The corridors were wide and graceful, with walls that seemed to be made of flowing liquid metal. Marcus was given quarters near the royal suite, luxurious by any standard, but especially compared to his cramped station accommodations. He'd barely set down his bag when the door chimed. Lyra entered without waiting for permission, followed by her sisters. "Your room is next to ours," Lyra announced happily. "Mother said we could show you around the ship." Over the next few hours, the princesses gave him a tour that was part educational, part chaotic adventure. Thyra explained the tactical systems with the expertise of someone groomed for leadership. Myra dragged him through the engineering sections, peppering the bemused Zalathi crew with questions about how everything worked. Lyra simply held his hand and provided commentary that was more imaginative than accurate. That evening, Marcus was summoned to the Empress's private study. He found her standing before a holographic display showing various star systems, points of light marking fleet positions. She looked tired, the weight of leadership evident in every line of her posture. "The situation is worse than I've let my daughters know," she said without preamble. "Kravax has more support than we initially believed. Several outer colonies have declared for him, claiming the peace treaty is a betrayal of Zalathi superiority." "How can I help?" Marcus asked simply. She turned to him, surprise flickering across her features. "Just like that? No questions about compensation? No negotiations? Your daughters trust me. That means something. Besides," Marcus shrugged, "I've seen what happens when people like Kravax get power. It never ends well for anyone, human or Zalathi." The Empress moved to a cabinet and pulled out a bottle of something that glowed faintly blue. "Zalathi brandy," she explained, pouring 2 glasses. "I think we both need it." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping the brandy that tasted like starlight and cinnamon. Finally, the Empress spoke. "Tell me about your daughter." Marcus stiffened, but something in her tone made him answer. "Sarah. She was 11 when Colony 7 fell. Smart like Myra, brave like Thyra, had a laugh like Lyra's. She wanted to be an engineer, used to follow me around the maintenance bays, asking a million questions." "I'm sorry," the Empress said softly. "I know Kravax led that assault. It was before I took the throne, but that doesn't absolve my people's responsibility." "War is war," Marcus said roughly. "We did our share of damage too. The mining station on Zelith Prime, the convoy at Proxima Junction. Nobody's hands are clean." "Which is why the peace must hold," the Empress said firmly. "My daughters represent the future I'm trying to build. A future where human and Zalathi children grow up as allies, not enemies. Kravax would destroy that dream." An alert sounded and the Empress activated her communication panel. A royal guard appeared on screen, his expression tense. "Your Majesty, we've detected a ship shadowing us. Configuration suggests it's one of Kravax's stealth corvettes." Marcus stood, his military instincts kicking in. "They're waiting for us to drop out of fold space. Ambush at the homeworld would cause maximum political damage." The Empress nodded grimly. "My thoughts as well. Options?" "Let me see the tactical display," Marcus said, moving to the holographic projection. He studied the positions, the routes, the gravitational fields. "There," he pointed to a nebula cluster. "The Mortius Nebula. The charged particles will disrupt their stealth systems, force them to reveal themselves." "That's human territory," one of the Zalathi officers protested. "Technically." "Neutral," Marcus corrected. "And I know the patrol commander at Outpost Zeta. Commander Walsh owes me a favor from way back." The Empress made a decision. "Do it. Alter course for the Mortius Nebula. Mr. Chen, contact your friend. Let's see if human creativity can solve a Zalathi problem." The next 6 hours were tense. Marcus worked with the ship's tactical team, his human perspective offering solutions the Zalathi hadn't considered. He'd contacted Commander Walsh, who'd agreed to help without asking too many questions. The princesses, sensing the tension, stayed close to their mother, but Lyra kept sneaking glances at Marcus, drawing strength from his calm presence. As they entered the nebula, the suspected corvette was forced to reveal itself, just as Marcus had predicted. But instead of one ship, 3 decloaked, moving to surround the stellar crown. Kravax himself is commanding the lead ship, the communications officer reported. He's demanding you surrender yourself and the princesses to face trial for treason against Zalathi purity. The arrogance, the Empress hissed. Then to Marcus's surprise, she turned to him. What would a human do in this situation? Marcus grinned, the expression sharp. We'd cheat. He activated his communicator. Commander Walsh, you in position? 4. Human patrol craft just waiting for the word, Chen, came the cheerful response. Your Majesty, Marcus said formally. Request permission to coordinate a joint response. Granted, she said immediately. Marcus moved to the tactical station, his fingers flying over the controls with practiced ease. Kravax expects a traditional Zalathi response. Shields up, weapons charging, formal combat. Instead, we're going to give him human chaos. He opened a channel to both the Zalathi crew and human patrol craft. Here's what we're going to do. The battle that followed would later be studied in both human and Zalathi military academies as a perfect example of integrated tactics. The Stellar Crown appeared to power down its weapons, a sign of surrender in Zalathi tradition. Kravax's ships moved in, confident in their victory. At the last moment, the human patrol craft erupted from hiding positions in the nebula's sensor-distorting clouds, their smaller, more agile vessels dancing between the corvette's firing solutions. Meanwhile, the Stellar Crown dumped its drive, plasma in a spectacular display that looked like a catastrophic system failure, but actually created a localized electromagnetic pulse. The corvette's shields, calibrated for energy weapons, couldn't compensate. In the confusion, Marcus had coordinated boarding parties of both human marines and Zalathi royal guards to take 2 of the 3 ships. Kravax's own vessel tried to flee, but the Empress herself took the weapons console, her shots surgically precise, disabling his engines without destroying the ship. The would-be usurper was captured within minutes of boarding, his supporters surrendering when they realized both human and Zalathi forces stood against them. In the aftermath, as Kravax was led away in restraints, spitting curses about racial purity and betrayal, Lyra ran to Marcus and hugged his legs tightly. You saved us again. We all saved each other, Marcus corrected, ruffling her hair. That's what allies do. The Empress approached her, bearing regal but her eyes warm. Mr. Chen, that was unorthodox. That's one word for it, Marcus said with a wry smile. I have a proposition, she said. The peace treaty needs to be more than words on a document. It needs living examples of cooperation. I'm creating a new position, liaison between our species, someone who understands both military and civilian applications of integration, someone my daughters trust and who has proven that human and Zalathi can work together. I'm just a mechanic, Marcus protested. You're a warrior who chose peace, a man who lost everything to war yet still protected enemy children, and apparently a tactical genius when properly motivated, the Empress countered. More importantly, you're someone both species can respect. Admiral Hayes has already agreed to the appointment from the human side. Thyra stepped forward. Please, Marcus. The conspiracy against Mother isn't over. We need someone we can trust. Myra added, and I still have so many questions about human engineering. Lyra just looked at him with those huge eyes and said, Stay. Marcus looked at the 3 princesses, who'd wandered into his life and changed it completely. He thought of his empty workshop, his solitary existence, and realized he didn't want to go back to that. All right, he said, but I'm keeping my workshop on the station. Someone needs to make sure those mining drones keep running. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the grand hall of the Zalathi Palace, wearing a uniform that was a blend of human military dress and Zalathi ceremonial robes. It was the first joint graduation ceremony of the Integrated Defense Academy, where young officers from both species trained together. Thyra, now his official ward along with her sisters, stood beside him in her cadet uniform, having insisted on enlisting despite her royal status. Myra was in the engineering section, already designing hybrid technologies that combined the best of both species. Lyra, still too young for the academy, was content to be the unofficial mascot, charming everyone with her enthusiasm for interspecies friendship. "Ambassador Chen," the Empress said, approaching with Admiral Hayes. "The first class looks promising." "They do." Marcus agreed, watching human and Zalathi cadets laughing together, sharing stories, building the friendships that would prevent future wars. "Though I still think ambassador is too fancy a title for a glorified mechanic." "You're more than that," the Empress said softly. "You're proof that peace is possible, that understanding can grow from the most unlikely soil." Lyra tugged on his sleeve. "Marcus, tell them about the time you fixed the coffee machine to make Zalathi tea." As laughter rippled through the group, Marcus realized that sometimes the universe put you exactly where you needed to be. He'd lost a daughter to war, but gained 3 more through peace. He'd been a soldier who fought Zalathi. Now he was building bridges between their species. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would always be those like Kravax on both sides who feared change, who preached separation and superiority. But looking at the young faces around him, human and Zalathi alike, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. The future was bright, and it would be built not on the battlefield, but in moments like these, where former enemies became friends, where different species became family, where a grumpy human mechanic could become the guardian of alien princesses and help forge a lasting peace. As Lyra climbed onto his shoulders to get a better view of the ceremony, her small hands holding tight to his hair, Marcus reflected that peace wasn't just the absence of war. It was the active choice to build something better, one day at a time, one friendship at a time, one saved child at a time. The ceremony concluded with the unified anthem, a new composition that blended human and Zalathi musical traditions. As the voices rose together, Marcus caught the Empress's eye. She nodded slightly, a gesture of respect between equals, between partners in this grand experiment of cooperation. "Marcus," Lyra whispered from her perch, "are you crying?" "No," he said, gruffly, though his eyes were suspiciously bright. "Just some nebula dust. Still getting it out of my system." Thyra, standing nearby, smiled knowingly but said nothing. Her hand briefly touched his arm, a gesture of understanding and shared emotion. They'd all come so far from that scared first meeting in the cargo bay. As the crowd began to disperse, Admiral Hayes approached. "Hell of a thing you've built here, Chen." "We built it," Marcus corrected. "All of us." "Still the modest mechanic, eh?" Hayes grinned. "The Joint Chiefs want a full report on the training program. They're talking about implementing it across all human colonies. And the Zalathi Council of Worlds has already approved expansion to 3 more systems," the Empress added, joining them. "Though I suspect keeping the spirit of cooperation will be harder as we scale up. That's why we start with the children," Marcus said, watching as young cadets from both species helped each other adjust their uniforms, shared jokes, made plans for after the ceremony. "They don't have our baggage, our old hatreds. To them, this is just normal." Myra ran up, her engineering insignia gleaming. "Marcus, Professor Jeck says my hybrid propulsion design could increase efficiency by 30%. He wants me to present it at the Joint Technology Summit." "That's excellent, Myra," Marcus said, genuine pride in his voice. "Just remember to explain it in terms both species can understand." "I will." She bounced excitedly before running back to her classmates. The Empress watched her daughter go with a soft expression. "She's flourished under your guidance, they all have." "They've taught me as much as I've taught them," Marcus replied. "Maybe more." As the day wound down and the palace settled into evening routines, Marcus found himself in the garden with all 3 princesses. It had become their tradition, these quiet moments away from ceremony and politics. Thyra was reading a report on her datapad, already preparing for her role as a future leader. Myra was sketching design modifications in a notebook, lost in her technological dreams. And Lyra was simply lying on the grass, looking up at the stars that were just becoming visible. "Marcus," Lyra said suddenly, "do you think Sarah would have liked us?" The question caught him off guard, as Lyra's questions often did. But instead of the sharp pain he once would have felt, there was only a gentle ache, like an old wound that had finally healed. "Yeah," he said softly. "She would have loved you. All of you. I wish we could have met her," Thyra said, looking up from her pad. "In a way, you have," Marcus replied. "Every time I teach you something she loved, every time we share a joke she would have enjoyed, every time we work together the way she believed people should. She's here in those moments." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars brightened overhead. Two species united in one small family, proof that from the ashes of war could grow something beautiful and lasting. The future stretched ahead, full of challenges and possibilities, but Marcus no longer faced it alone. He had found his purpose, his family, his peace. And it had all started with 3 frightened children hiding in a cargo bay, needing nothing more than kindness from an enemy. Sometimes, Marcus thought, the universe had a strange sense of humor, but sometimes, just sometimes, it got things exactly right.